Hi there and welcome to Influence, a show all about the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. I'm your host, Jessica Graves. I'm excited to have a couple of students who've recently traveled abroad, and we're going to hear from them today. The first is Miss Jillian Robinette. Welcome, Jill, to the show. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about where you're from and maybe how you got to Mississippi State?
Yeah, Dr. Graves, thank you so much for having me. I'm originally from Boise, Idaho. I'm a fifth-generation Idahoan on both of my parents' sides. And the biggest reason I came to Mississippi State was the Ag Econ department. I'm an Ag Business Production major, and throughout my entire college selection process, the Ag Econ department was really personal. I received handwritten letters and phone calls and text messages, and they helped guide me through the remainder of my junior and senior year, and they were really the reason why I chose to come here.
That's awesome. That's really encouraging to hear also. Okay, so you've recently just returned from Guatemala. Had you traveled abroad before you traveled to Guatemala recently?
So I actually lived in Canada for 19 months for first and second grade, so I had been there, but you know, it's really not that different from America. So going into Guatemala, I wasn't too sure what to expect. I mean, we had talked about it in preparation, but I was really excited to get to experience something new and just kind of be immersed in a different culture.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as an agribusiness major, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about kind of what you saw from that agribusiness lens in terms of food production and maybe how those goods got from the farm to the market?
Yeah, so Heather Gladney, another ag business major on the trip, and I actually talked about this quite a bit. It was really interesting to be in the markets and you would be kind of bartering back and forth for the goods. And it was so interesting to see a truly free market just operating on its own and like determining your willingness to pay versus like the cost of the inputs that the vendor is factoring in.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when we were in the rural areas, Momostenango and Rakana and Utica, a lot of the agriculture production was mostly subsistence. So they would literally have like an acre or two just on the side of a hill or the side of a cliff, and they would really be farming like just corn, or they would be integrating their livestock into their fields to munch on what was left after harvest. So it wasn't until we kind of got down into the valley near Guatemala City and Antigua that you would see the big production. And it seems like a lot of the supply chain is individuals, because when we were traveling on the roads, you really didn't see a lot of semi-trucks like you see here in America. And as far as I could tell, there was no train system at all. So it seemed like a lot of what the goods that were being delivered were being done by individuals in pickups and suburban cars.
Yeah, that's some great observations. What about, you also have a keen interest in regenerative agricultural practices, and so maybe briefly talk a little bit about that in terms of what you saw.
So I would love to get some more regenerative agriculture integrated into Guatemala. One thing I noticed is that after they harvest usually corn or sugarcane or kind of those like stocky crops, they would just leave the soil bare and they would till it and build it up into the ridges, but they wouldn't plant anything else until the wet season was when they planted, and then they'd harvest and they'd leave it bare all through the dry season. And one of the biggest components of regenerative ag is keeping the roots in the soil. And the other thing I noticed is that their soil was really, really compacted in the areas when they are doing regenerative agriculture, which can make it really hard for plants to grow because the seedling can't push up and the roots can't push down. So I would love to see more like cover crops and intercropping and things like that. But one thing that Nate and I did notice was they do livestock integration. So they'll have the chickens and they'll have the cattle just grazing on what's left in the soil. So that's really healthy. It helps the soil organic matter to build up. So they're halfway there, but I would love to see some more progression on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a rather unique skill. You know how to crochet. Admittedly, I don't know how to crochet. But you and a few of the other students were able to teach some of the ladies in the Western Highlands how to crochet, and perhaps that be an output for them to be able to generate income. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so I learned to crochet in elementary school. My mom taught me. I've made a few blankets, a few scarves, a sweater, but one of the things in Guatemala is that they don't always have the means to go buy clothing. So everything they get, pretty much besides what they grow themselves, is bought at the market. And in the rural communities, their market is mainly food-based. So in order to buy clothing, they need to go out of the highlands and into the bigger cities where they can buy that clothing. So crocheting is a great option for them to be able to take the byproduct of the sheep and the wool and use that to make it into something usable. Yeah. And it was just special to share that connection with them, just kind of one-on-one, and we would have some really good conversations.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, that's going to do it for this segment of Influence. We'll see you back in just a few minutes.
Our world is changing. The way we work, the way we connect, the way we see things around us. At Mississippi State University, we're agents of change, creating our own bright futures, solving real problems, turning challenges into possibilities, and lighting the way to a whole new world of emerging markets. Through MSU's new state-of-the-art Center for Entrepreneurship and Outreach, we're collaborating across campus, sharing perspectives and resources of multiple disciplines to power dreams. But we're so much more than dreamers. We've launched hundreds of student-led businesses, earning millions in revenue, and impacting our state's economy in new and creative ways. We're the next generation of business leaders, and we're ready for a changing world. How do we know we're ready? Because we're the ones changing it. In today's information age, speed and technology drive innovation and economic advantage. At Mississippi State University, our Cray supercomputer is among the fastest academic systems in the world. How fast? Wrap your mind around 593 trillion calculations per second. What can we do with a system like this? What can't we do? When NASA had safety concerns with John Glenn's shuttle mission, they turned to us. When the Navy needed a better submarine, we helped design it. We built a better, safer engine cradle for the Corvette, assisted Homeland Security with cyber strategies, and predicted severe weather patterns for NOAA. We're changing the game for supercomputing while helping protect and shape tomorrow, opening up a whole new world of possibilities.
Hi there, and welcome back to Influence. Our second guest today is going to be Miss Christian Jones. She's an Animal and Dairy Sciences major. Welcome, Christian. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, tell them a little bit about where you're from and maybe how you got to Mississippi State.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm Christian Jones, like you said, and I'm from South Haven, Mississippi. I recently transferred from Mississippi Gulf Coast, where I played college softball. And I chose to come to State because I'm pursuing a pre-veterinary route, and it definitely just offered the most broad and most hands-on experience learning for me, so yeah. It's a great option.
Nice. So previously we heard Jill talk a little bit about some of her experiences through the agribusiness lens. Why don't you tell us a little bit about maybe some observations that you made while we were in Guatemala as it relates to food security and perhaps some of those challenges, and then talk about how those things shape your aspiring to be a veterinarian.
So I think one of the main things that really sparked my attention with food security was the fact that we did surveys, like talking to Dr. Conrad, and she just mentioned how some of the people, they were only eating protein maybe 15 times, there's 15 days in between each time they're consuming protein. So I thought that was very shocking, because here we're practically consuming it every single day. So that was one of the things that grasped my attention. And another thing was when we went to the slaughterhouse in Momostenango and just seeing how they went through the process, because here they just drill into your brain that the way that you handle an animal really kind of affects the meat quality. So I just thought it was very different, that the fact they could be efficient but also get the same effect at the end of it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as an aspiring veterinarian, how do you feel like some of those experiences may have shaped your understanding of livestock production and how we get food from the farm to the table, if you will, and then your role as a veterinarian and maybe, you know, managing livestock from an animal health perspective, but also keeping in mind some of those One Health concepts where we have integration between the environment and humans and animals. Talk about that a little bit.
So one thing I got from it is the fact there's different ways to go through livestock production. Like there's not one set way, and sometimes you don't have those tools to do it so-called the proper way. So I think just being innovative and adaptable is one thing I learned from it.
Adaptability. We talked a lot about adaptability, and I have to say I was super impressed with the students collectively. Our team was highly adaptable because we had some plans, and sometimes those plans don't always come to fruition in the way we think they should. So talk about maybe that soft skill of adaptability. How do you feel like, what did you learn from that experience in Guatemala, and how will that help you moving forward?
So I think it definitely improved my adaptability skills, because going into everything, I'm kind of a perfectionist. So I want things to be on like itinerary or a schedule. So just going on this trip really shaped me into a more adaptable person and made me realize that things can go the right way even though they're not on your schedule.
So adaptability. We'll all keep that in our back pocket. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some words of encouragement for students who may be on the fence about study abroad. So we have maybe some prospective students that may be watching, or parents. Talk about what are some words of wisdom that you would give to a student who's like, I just don't know if I'm ready to travel abroad. What would you say to that student who's kind of on the fence? Words of wisdom.
I would definitely say be open-minded, because you don't really have expectations going in. You're just kind of like open to anything. And one person that inspired me on this trip is Nate, because he's never flown before. And I was like, that's so cool that he's so open to this, because flying can be kind of scary.
Yeah.
So I think just being open-minded and just knowing that you can get so much out of it, because this trip, I can't put it in words how it like impacted me. So I just think it was a great opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we're running a little bit low on time, but one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is, where's your favorite place on campus and why?
The Union, because I love Chick-fil-A. It's always my go-to.
All right, it's a nice little hub and a lot of buzz there from time to time. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Influence. I look forward to seeing you back next time.